And welcome to another exciting installment of the Terrorisk podcast. I'm with Sid.
How's it going?
Yeah, it's fucking exciting to get to chat with Sid. Thanks for coming on, man.
Yeah, absolutely, man.
Yeah, I'm ready with my 2 White Claws. I'll roll up some joints while we chat.
Cool.
Yeah, what city are you out in right now?
Currently I'm in Santa Fe. Excellent fucking biome, excellent weather. I don't know if you're keeping up with like the weather patterns of the United States as a whole this season. It is fucking nutty, but we have kind of avoided that. Santa Fe used to be like a really cool tourist town. Now it's very corny, but everything besides the city itself, I like a lot. So,
You know what I heard is a hot spot right now, like a spot where everyone should live to be happy. I heard Salt Lake City is really is really good right now, man.
oh yeah, of course. Yeah, put it at the top of the list, man.
Yeah,
I'm all for it. Go hang out in the poison cloud. I'm sure that'll feel great.
yeah, Salt Lake City was a big one. I heard Albuquerque. Well, I genuinely believe Albuquerque is a chill place to live. I'm actually thinking about going there.
Albuquerque gets a horrible rep, man. But I don't think it's deserved at all. It's one of those places everybody's like, oh, it's got a high crime rate. You'll genuinely be fined. It's a place where like if you fuck around, you find out, sure. But if you're not somebody like partying with fucking creepy people or like going out of your way to get into shady situations, it's a safe place. It's actually rated pretty high. It is the safest city in America for trick-or-treaters during Halloween. We've got some crime out here, but it's got some ethics to it.
So, what were you saying?
I was just saying it's got a high crime rate, but it's got some ethics to it. My favorite joke is I had a friend recently who moved out here for a short period of time, and she heard like automatic gunfire out behind her apartment, and she was super freaked out by it. And I told her not to worry because everybody in the city is too poor to miss. Like, like they're shooting at each other, bro. Like, don't worry about it.
That's true.
So yeah, I fuck with Albuquerque like heavily.
Is Santa Fe a red state or a blue state?
You know, it's
A purple state?
I would say it's purple. I would say it's very liberal presenting, but the actual attitudes of the tourists who have essentially taken over the town, they're like ashamed conservatives. They hate poor people here. They hate the aesthetic of it. You know, they love the aesthetic of being very progressive and open-minded and artistic. But they hate the actual aesthetic of what that looks like. You'll see people who have moved up to the northern part of Santa Fe, which is like the wealthier spot, bitching that they have taco trucks out front, and it's like, how are you mad at that? How are you mad at thriving small businesses in one of the few states left where like, retail and food are still like kicking it? You know,
So they hate culture, pretty much.
they do. They hate culture. I think one of the corniest things I'd seen is this year I went to Target and saw a Monopoly board that was Santa Fe themed. If that gives you an idea of, kind of what they think is culturally cool out here.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
I mean, there's always weird takes on Monopoly. Like I played Ghetto-opoly. It was actually really cool.
I believe that. I used to have a Pokemon Monopoly from like the first gen. Came with little rubber Pokemon dudes. It was cool.
Yeah. I never liked like Star Wars takes on board games.
Nah. I grew up loving Star Wars aesthetic, and I still low key like fuck with it. But in terms of like merchandising and stuff, like nah.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, fucking. I don't know. I mean, my when it comes to Monopoly, it's like one of those games that it's just impossible to play fairly. Like you're not no one follows all the fucking rules, and someone's always cheating, which actually is pretty reminiscent of actual like business and like commerce.
Absolutely, and it makes you feel the same way as well. I think Settlers of Catan is a lot better, a lot more egalitarian, harder to cheat at. I was so anti board game, anti tabletop stuff until I lived in an apartment with like a bunch of geeks, and COVID hit, and so everybody had lost their jobs. We were all stuck at home, and our older homie brought out the treasure chest of all his geek shit, all his Magic the Gathering from back in the day, and we just got into it. And yeah, I actually like Catan and Magic now.
Magic is good. I recently read this article. It was about the guy who cleaned out a tournament, a pro level tournament on shrooms.
That's a classic story. Yes,
I actually really empathized with that because like when I did that, when I won first place in that sword tournament, I was like high as a kite.
I remember reading you posting that, man. Yeah, how did that feel?
Greatest. It was probably the greatest feeling of my life. Like I think because of that moment, I could die today, and I'd be like, you know what? I did the thing. Like I did the thing. I fucking did my thing. So it's like if I died, I could, walk into the afterlife with my head held high. Like I'm ready.
Absolutely.
I'm good.
fucking Kempo berserker. Like.
Yeah. So I was just like, yeah, it was one of those, and I'm of the belief that we don't get opportunity. Like I think especially young boys, they don't get enough opportunities to like put something on the line like that. I mean, for me, it was stupid. It's like I'm gonna shave my head if I don't get first place, so I just went and got first place. So I didn't have to shave my head.
Yeah, I feel you, man. You could have rocked it, but I feel you.
I mean, it was my watered down rite of passage, and it's something that none of us get anymore. We're not told by the hunters in our community to go kill this saber-toothed tiger so we could prove ourselves to ourselves.
Absolutely, man. I was fortunate that I grew up with a pretty outdoorsy dad, and like I was in Boy Scouts and shit like that. But
yeah,
nature was just so fucking inaccessible to me, and I grew up just very tunnel visioned into suburban nothingness. I had no cultural context. I didn't know what was like valuable or good in life at all. And it's kind of interesting as a grown adult now to be like, I mean, for the sake of the people watching this, the past 4 years I have lived mostly outdoors, roughing it in a car. I got to live in a cave 2 years ago. It was great. So coming back to all this shit and having to self-initiate
civilization.
Self-initiate. This shit has just it's been incredibly eye-opening. I used to be somebody who was very city-oriented, very aesthetic-oriented, very concerned with like my social status and stuff. I would have never showed up on camera with fucking caveman beard hair. You know what I mean?
It's all good, man. I mean, look, you're kind of preaching to the choir. Not that I'm a particularly outdoorsy person, like by nature, but I was also a former Boy Scout, Troop 85. Like I was a shitty Boy Scout, but I still I was good at the stuff that I picked up on. Like first aid, spotting poison oak, poison ivy, poison sumac, knowing how to use a blade, knowing how to like whittle shit, knowing how to tie certain knots. Yeah, I get all that. I just I didn't make it to anything past like fucking tenderfoot or whatever.
Right.
But yeah, I showed up for stuff and merit badges and shot guns and all that stuff, and which is actually probably helped me out a lot. Like I probably take it way more for granted, especially as a city boy. Like a New York City boy.
I get that. Yeah. Well, it's like I grew up with that stuff being around, but I had no value for it. I always thought it was so tedious. I always thought like, when my dad was nice enough to take us camping for the summer, it was like we had to like load up a fucking caravan, and it's all about logistics. And I was like, this shit's a pain in the ass. Like, I want to play my fucking Game Boy. I want to flirt with girls on like MySpace. That's what I like to do. And now I will not pretend I am not an outdoorsy person. I like my fucking comforts. I like opening up my Switch and playing Fortnite and getting a Star Wars guy skin, Red Stormtrooper. But forcing myself to like embrace this shit because I've been so entrenched in fucking concrete for a long time. Like it's been a world of difference for at least my quality of life. So
Yeah, that's a good position, and I think about that a lot because, I afford myself a lot of creature comforts, but I always have to remind myself that at the end of the day, it's because I want to make music. Like
Right.
I want to do this podcast. I want to make this music, and if I'm gonna be sitting in one spot, because that's what like crafts people do, they have to stick to one spot once they gather their materials and to just make shit. So that's what I have to do here. I have to like whether it's I realize like as long as I have this desire to make music, I won't. First of all, I won't ever like fully be satisfied in one single place. I'm just gonna have to find a place and decide this is it. This is where I'm just gonna sit the fuck down, put my head down, and just make stuff. Right?
Right. Well, and it's like it's funny you say that. I think about that a lot too. I think nowadays the way like okay, if you're somebody who's like into video games, for instance, if you do not have a bedroom setup like dedicated to doing that, you're actually missing out on a majority of what the experience is catered to.
You're
now.
wasting your energy and wasting your time.
Absolutely, absolutely. And you could be monetizing it too. You could be sitting there Twitch streaming, chatting with people and shit. So it's like if you are going to have your creature comfort and dedicated, craft that involves technology and being in one place, like, yeah, fucking go all out. Make it a fucking workshop. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Make it like a fucking garage with sawmills and shit inside,
Oh yeah. It's also just the problem is now that like I'm noticing that, the millennials have finally, like, in my opinion, have actually been activated, like fully arrived. I look around now at what millennials are up to, and I'm like, all right, now we're actually doing stuff for the first time. I think.
Yeah.
'Cause Now we're in the first time where millennials are actually like making. I mean, you'd have exceptions to the rule, like way back when there was like 20-something-year-olds our age now that were like making millions, but they were like few and far between, and they were just following the same capitalist model. But now
Right.
now you see like people like millennials actually like making the committed decision to start a family, or making the committed decision to join the military, or making like doing whatever the fuck.
Absolutely, man. And I think our conditions are so much different than the prior generation. Like my parents are Gen X, and their whole life changed when they stumbled into accidentally having a kid. And then
Yeah,
it was
same.
like, oh, okay, retrospectively, let's get our shit together. And they did a great job. I'm not talking shit about that. But for us, like, I've got homies out there who are like well married and have been married for a long time. And, they get their awesome wife pregnant, and it becomes a very serious discussion of like, are we able to keep this? It's not like back in the day, our grandparents' generation, where like you could be very Catholic and just keep pumping them out. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like
Yeah.
these things have to be serious considerations. So if you choose to do anything, you really have to fucking do it now. And I think that's a good thing and a bad thing.
Well, it's a good thing because we're more thoughtful, but it's also a bad thing because it's pretty much eliminating surprise from your life. It's pretty much like, because now we have like such an innate sense of like this inner statistic, right? We have this inner sense of knowing of, it's like, oh, like we, having your finger on the pulse of like the trends of your generation. I feel like we could see further into the future, like we could see like where this will end up. It's like if I keep seeing this girl, eventually we're gonna make a mistake. I'm gonna knock her up. She's gonna keep it, and I'm gonna have to stay with her. So might as well just. And so it's like I think our generation is a lot and beyond is a lot more able to like see into the future of decisions and stuff.
Absolutely, and I'm seeing with a lot of my older millennial friends, the guys who are towards the the other end of the spectrum. Um, I'm very. I feel bad for a lot of those guys because they rode like the original model of just kind of playing it by ear.
I just want the cream pie, man. I just wanted a cream pie.
Yeah. They got decent jobs. They had a girlfriend they never married for like 8 years. They're working in an office, and now they're coming towards the end of it and being like, "Fuck, I have nothing. I'm not getting my security deposit back because we filled the home with fucking cats that pissed everywhere."
Yeah. Yeah.
And they're finding themselves in really fucking scary positions because they did not like have a plan. It's not like I'm somebody who has that great of a fucking plan. Like I said, I've been living out of a car for the past 4 years.
Yeah.
This last month actually is the first apartment I have rented in 6 years.
I know. I that's cool.
So
I mean, it's funny
yeah.
you mentioned that because like when you talk about how like the homies now, a lot of homies now collective homie is now like fucking, you know, in a really tough spot where it's like they realize they have nothing except for like this bottomed out like zombie company that's just really was valueless in the long run. So what happens, it's like when I see that, I'm like, that was me from like 17 though. Like I was already there when I was like, because I came out of like foster care towards the end of my teenage years. So it's like I was like that was already behind me. So I'll never judge it. I'll never be like, you fucking idiot, because I sympathize. No, I empathize actually, because I went through that. But it's like I don't know how to convince them. It's like, you'll be okay, because the stakes are higher when you're a fucking grown up, right?
Absolutely. And, you know, say you were enjoying those fucking 6 beers a day for 10 years and your liver starts getting fucking inflamed and your gut starts getting all hard and you're 35 and still have no job advancement. But like, it's interesting you bring up the foster care thing, because I think about this a lot. My dad is an adoptee, and like I said, my parents are Gen X. So they were like 19 when they had kids. I've got very young parents and very young grandparents.
Yeah, same here.
My dad had a similar sort of thing going on where like he was like, I got to plan my fucking life. Like I'm going to do Boy Scouts. I'm going to get the right grades. I'm going to get the right career. Because I think not having a degree of just like familial like social normalcy, like
it's a Confucian value, but yeah.
yes, totally. But it can put a little bit of healthy alarmism in you to be like, okay, I am genuinely responsible for my own life and things going forward. You know, I had an older millennial friend of mine, as he was reflecting on like some of the mistakes he's made in his life. He said, I think our problem with our generation is the Weezer song "Pork and Beans."
I didn't hear it. I should listen to more Weezer.
Oh no, you shouldn't. And it's also one of the worst songs they ever made. The lyrics are something like the theme of the lyrics are basically like, you know, I'm free and I'm an adult now and I'm gonna eat pork and beans raw out of the can and I'm gonna have cereal for dinner type shit. You know, and I think a lot of the older millennial generation did have that attitude of like, okay, cool, I'm an adult now, I can dig into all the things I couldn't get into as a kid.
Yeah.
And I just don't think that's been a healthy mentality.
It's funny you mentioned that, because like I grew up in a part of New York City, Staten Island. I'm sure you know of it. It's like where it's like the suburbs of a city, like a suburb residential area. But you know, because that means like you would end up, if you're a creative of any kind, you're going to be around a lot of like musicians, like young teenage musicians while growing up. So that's who I grew up with. And, you know, they all got to like pretty much have that, like where it's like, oh, I'm technically an adult now, but hey, I got this because this is what I do. And you're part of, you become a fucking scenester.
Right.
And it's kind of like it's kind of the same deal. It becomes one of those reasons why your life would just like stagnate.
Yeah, well, and it's like, you know, it's funny as a dude not from the coast. Like I'm from Denver, I'm from Colorado. Yeah. We are as center of the country as possible, and you know, if you travel east, like it's just miles and miles of extended Kansas. If you travel west, like you've got the mountains, but there's only 2 roads out there. We were a very culturally isolated kind of situation, but I found it interesting because like growing up, like we would watch all the shit coming out of the coast or like the basement shows coming out of the Midwest.
Yeah.
And then try to fucking emulate that and destroy our fucking lives very quickly because there's no scene to hold you.
Yeah.
There's no support system of like, you know, creative weirdos who are trying to make their way through this shit.
Or like a hard ethical line.
Yeah, just obliterated on fucking impact, man. And that was always very formative for me.
Yeah, same here. Well, I always have that joke that I always post where it's like punk rock was invented by the FBI. Because like it's one of those, it's fun. You can't disprove it. Like,
no, it's fucking true, man. And you know, I grew up with the whole fucking punk poser fucking aesthetic and set of values and shit. And made a bunch of mistakes in my life that I'm still paying for, trying to engage in some fucking rampant lifestyleism. And yeah, I the punks of our generation were the hippies of the last generation, just breeding complacency. Um,
But at least we get the internet to like really pump out our toxicity instead of taking it out on the real world, you know? I thought that was always a plus. Like that's a good benefit.
oh, absolutely, man. I'm all for it. That's one of my favorite, outlets for my aggression. Some people spar. I like to get online and just be mean to strangers.
When I was a teenager, I used to do graffiti. I used to just write on like public and private property like
Yeah.
because it's fun, like going out with like a bunch of spray paint with your boys at like 4 a.m. with just drunk off your asses. Like, let's do this.
see, that's what I mean. That type of shit was so foreign to where I grew up. Like, we have no fucking, like we don't have train hopper kids.
Yeah.
We don't have like if you were homeless during the winter, there's no fucking abandoned building to go squat in. I remember as I became an adult and like people from the Midwest coming out to Denver thinking it was going to be very bohemian and like, oh, I can just fucking scrap it out like I did up in Appalachia. It's like, nah, not at all, bro. What are you talking about? You're going to hop a train? Like you're going to stay in an abandoned building? Like where? What are you talking about? So
I mean, ultimately to me, it's just all coasting onto this like fucking it's like when you're young and growing up and you're a part of a scene or maybe part of no scene or part of an alternative lifestyle or whatever you could think of, it's all just coasting. Like your ego is just coasting on this one thing to cling to until it just finally collapses, because they all collapse eventually. Like, and then that's when you're faced with the real battle that everyone has to deal with, whether it takes them like 18 years to get there or 80 years to get there.
right.
It's that existential, like that shadow, that dark night of the soul. It's like what the fuck am I doing, man? Like,
Absolutely, dude. And well, it's like it's funny because I'm pretty well traveled through like the western half of the United States, but I finally got to visit Cleveland a few years back, and like, dude, that blew my fucking mind. Like I went there with some like kids who grew up there being like fucking dirty punk kids, dirty crust punks.
Yeah.
And just like seeing like a sprawling fucking steel dragon of a dilapidated bridge collapsing into a river and like buildings that literally look like Gotham City shit.
Yeah.
I was like, damn, like it would be easy to feel super tunnel visioned here, and like the only thing you could do is resist it by living a different lifestyle. Like I get it now. I'm way less critical. But yeah, like in industrial runoff and fucking Rust Belt type shit, man, and just sprawling urbanism. Like I'm so not familiar with it.
Well, New York City is not like that classical Midwest urbanism. It's like its own weird, because it's a landmark, I guess, value of it. Like the fact
Right.
that it's also the pedigree, because it's such an old city in America. Too old, in my opinion.
Yeah, yeah, I feel you. I grew up really like wanting to get to big cities and shit like that, and my first big city in my mind was like Denver. It's right there. That's the real city. And I get there and I'm like, wow, this is amazing. And then I start working for an airport and I start flying to places like Seattle or Portland or in LA, and like really seeing what a fucking city was.
Yeah.
Denver's now shooting for like mega city status. It's concrete from fucking Colorado Springs down into the Denver metro. But like, dude, I just had no fucking idea. No idea.
Well, that's what happens when like a lot of people move to a city. A lot of money gets pumped in there. But LA is psychotic to me. LA is a crazy, crazy place. I mean, because you have a lot of like, not just like the Hollywood, that's the surface level. There's like all that like weird stuff. Because I mean, my favorite explanation, there's a lot of theories and weird fringe beliefs, but my favorite is the ley lines one. So if you look at the ley lines,
yeah, I know what you're talking about.
it goes right through that area, through Nevada and LA, and I'm like, that makes sense.
Yeah. Like LA, as a dude who lives in his car, or lived in his car. I love West Hollywood. I love LA. I love West Hollywood. But as somebody who has ever had to like visit there or live there for periods of time, man, like I cannot fucking stand it. But when you bring up the ley lines, like I know some of them run through like cities in Arizona that I've been to,
Yeah.
and like they've got a same fucking nuttiness to them, man. And it's funny, the period of time I was in Arizona most, kind of near Sedona, and like Phoenix and Tempe, you'll see in tourist shops something called like the void or the warp or the vortex,
The portals.
yeah, and you'll talk to the junkies out there, and they'll be like, dude, like Arizona, like these parts of Arizona are impossible to leave. And I have gotten stranded in that part of Arizona so many fucking times, and it has been so tedious to get like the fuck out. Like it's always like a huge endeavor. So yeah, I think about that stuff too.
Yeah, it's also fucked up now because like especially in like the present and current day, like there's the bedrock of reality is just gone. You know, nobody. It's like nobody knows what the fuck is real anymore. Nobody. Like whether you ask a scientist, a doctor, a reporter, nobody, like a politician.
Yes. It's funny. I was just kind of like idly thinking the other day, you know, the fucking Assassin's Creed motto that's like, nothing is true, everything is permitted.
Yeah.
Well, I think we now live in a world where it's the opposite. Like everything is true, nothing is permitted. I think about like the Buddhist samsara all the time because it's like a realm of illusion, whatever. And we really do live in an era now where like, I have a screen strapped to my hand that is like just telling me fucking schizo shit all fucking day. I do my best to practice discernment as like
Yeah, discernment.
yeah, the chief survival tool of now. It's like more useful than like building a fire and learning how to fish and shit. But
Yeah.
it's fucking overwhelming, man. It's completely overwhelming.
Well,
it's so hard to know what's true.
Well, that's why if I ever have to beat a singular message like a fucking drum, I would always like, I wouldn't care about like, you know, the lizard people or the aliens or 5D. Like, I wouldn't give a shit about any of that. My main concern would be, listen, just align your mind, body, and soul. That's all you got to worry about, dude. If you do that,
Yeah.
everything will be fine. Like, just, you know, make sure those things aren't at war with each other. The Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Make sure, whatever, however you call it, make sure they're not at war with each other and you'll be okay.
I genuinely agree, man. That was actually a huge eye-opening thing for me as like somebody who in my early 20s and stuff, I was just trying to figure out like where I fit or what's wrong with the world and what I can do about it or what I need to put on other people about understanding the world. And now I'm at a place, man, where I'm like, I really just want to like feel good in my body,
Yeah.
feel grounded in my spirit or soul, and feel like my brain is not decaying and I'm not going nuts.
And it's all connected. Like chances, if you're good to your soul and good to your body, your mind's gonna be fine. If you're good to your mind and you're good to your soul, your body will be fine. You know, like
Right.
It's all connected. It's all love. It's all rooted in love. You got to like love
Right.
yourself, and then therefore that love will emanate outwards.
Absolutely. And if you're doing the opposite of like, I have a great mind, I have a great soul, but like fuck my body.
Yeah,
Hate my
yeah.
fucking body. You're gonna tank the whole system, bro. You're gonna start going a little fucking nuts.
And that's the
You're
most
gonna
common pitfall, right? Like the first, that's
Yeah.
the number one because it's the most obvious. It's the most material. People fuck up with their bodies. They're like, they get so spiritual or they get so mental. They're like, nah,
Right.
fuck. I don't care about being a physical, like whatever, like a physical decaying, like slob, like whatever. But then like it could also go bad in other ways. Like, well, they'll get jacked in the body, but their soul will be heavily compromised. You know, maybe they're doing some,
Absolutely.
you
They're
know?
they're just a fucking meat husk. You know
Yeah,
what I
yeah.
mean? Just
Yeah. So I and it's not even like I think it's like where you got to strengthen one or you know whatever. I think it's just alignment, not even strengthening. It's alignment. Just make
Yeah.
it so they're not contradicting each other. Make it so your body's not disagreeing with your mind, who's not disagreeing with your soul. Make sure they're all on the same team. That's all you got to do. You don't have to do anything extra. Just make sure they're on the same team. Like working
Absolutely.
together. Yeah.
like you could be like a pretty physically meek person with a very simple spiritual perspective and a very simple mind and
you'll
live in
yeah.
yeah you'll just like kind of always just like have a place in life.
Well, I think Dostoevsky was the one who like said the fool is the one who always wins in the end, because the fool is the one. Yeah, the fool doesn't know to compromise himself. I'm just doing what feels good and feels right, and lo and behold, your intuition is way better. Like,
right.
which is why, like, IQ and intellect, like, I think that's great stuff to have, but it only makes like spiritual alignment harder the smarter you
Absolutely.
are. But I do think if you have a high IQ and you do get over that huge hump and finally embrace faith in whatever, not in a cringe like whatever way, in a bad way, in a way that loses your agency, but in an empowering way. And if you embrace that as a high IQ person, you become like leveled up like exponentially,
Yeah. There's a level of, and there's a ton of memes about it where you see like the mid-tier or the lower end of IQ and
the hierarchy.
Yeah. You see it being kind of a horseshoe. It's like once you get like intelligent enough to understand simplicity and surrender to some mysteries and not trying to over account and rationalize everything, like you actually become a much more brilliant person. This is a little tangential, but like I think about this a lot. So like in Kabbalah, I'll speed through this. There's a node in the tree of life called the Dath, or Daath, and it can be seen as like just raw data. It can just be seen as raw intellect, devoid of all else things.
Like
and
DNA.
And there's kind of this idea where like if all you're doing is like collecting intellect without like application or like moving that, without practice or moving that intellect around through other areas of your life, you end up clogging that node, and it leads to the more like vampiric or darker or impure processes of life kind of leaching in. I think of it like a clogged drain. So you'll definitely meet those people in life where it's like they're super fucking intelligent, but they're miserable to be around, and they don't get anything done, and they sit and just think all the time and are devoid of existence, but are never, they never reach a point of contentment. All they do is hoard thought. And I think that can be very damaging.
Yeah. Also, it's, aside from that, there's also like, it's a form of hedonism, right? That it's like chill hedon. It's like it's like the city of Portland. Like, I don't want to think, I don't want to work. It's chill hedonism.
Yes, totally.
Yeah, and it is miserable to be around, especially if you're a person who even vaguely strives for something, any minimal ideal. Even that'll just offend you. You'll be like, "What the fuck is wrong with you, man?"
Right, or it might like even lead to fucking psychosis. You see plenty of very intelligent people who are just like hoarding thought all the time and overthinking this life and this existence and all the crazy variables we live in, and they just start to go fucking nuts.
Yo, that's really funny, because like I still say this to this day, like, because when I was going through a quote unquote categorical spiritual awakening, I said if I didn't have martial arts, like to have to go through this with, like, I would have lost my fucking mind. I would have been one of those like really bad like spirit Nazis, like part of the consciousness industry, like that. Yeah. I'm glad I had martial arts to like keep me straight, to like make sure like you can't cross this line, because then you won't go back. And I'm like, you're right.
It's so funny you say that, because in a lot of literary occultism or like armchair occultism, like a lot of people like to get into the material itself, but like completely ignore, Crowley had fucking recommendations for Qigong. And I'm very critical of Crowley. I'm not quoting him as like some awesome fucking guy, but if you go into these spiritual practices without like having alignment, like you said, like you can easily go fucking crazy.
Yes. It's a discipline. You have to approach it with discipline.
Right.
And that's because the allure of it is so vague, but it's so strong at the same time. Like, because deep down, it's like, oh, if I emanate a certain vibe, maybe like girls will want to fuck me or some shit. And that's what they do. They do that with expanded consciousness. They will get into more vulnerable people's heads and get them to do whatever they want. Like I've seen it.
Absolutely.
Seen it,
Absolutely. And then they get away with it for a while, and then their life fucking blows up. And
yeah, and there's entire industries built around that shit.
oh, absolutely, absolutely. Our civilization is very well built on behavior modification without alignment.
Yeah. So that's why I'm always going to, like, you could call it preaching. I don't care. I'm always going to repeat the same thing. It's like, this is, if there was one useful thing that I would tell people is, alignment, self-alignment. And they're like, what's that? It's like mind, body, and soul. And mind and body are like easy to comprehend. It's the soul one that's like really tricky to like explain and like understand.
It's like a three-legged table. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't matter how long the legs are. You just want them to be like the same fucking size.
Yeah. And it'll be stable.
Right.
And it's actually kind of like fucked up how divorced we are from that like understanding. And it's like, how did this happen? And if you think of the possibilities, that's when you become like a conspiracy theorist and you're like, it was the serpent bloodline that like was that engineered these lies.
Right.
Yeah, but then again, it's like I like to dive into that, and I do believe in a lot of it, like honestly. But it's like it doesn't matter because when it comes to the actual things that I would say to people, it's got nothing to do with like who's actually like controlling the strings. It's just, dude, worry about you, man. If you worry about you, they can't touch you. Like honestly.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, even like health. I think. I think like with mental disorders and stuff, I think people reach a level of like really heavy cognitive dissonance with the situation in their life that causes like a mental spiral. But then we take those mental spirals and we itemize them and try to say, this is BPD, this is bipolar, this is XYZ.
It's convenient.
Right. And so instead of, it's like what you said, like instead of talking about fucking lizard people and shit, like, or whatever the actual truth of the matter is, like focus on the fucking reduction of the symptoms and like just getting out of the fucking thought spiral.
Because it's not like people are coming at you physically with guns and forcing you to live a certain. No, it's a mental game. It's a spirit. Right. It's a psychological, spiritual warfare.
Right.
It's like we have to understand that it's a metaphysical battle. It's not like a material thing we could just muscle through. It's not going to work that way.
Absolutely, and attention is finite. Attention is a resource, and there are so many things in our life, especially as Americans, engineered to just have you bleeding your fucking attention and granulating it and granulating it and granulating it. Am I autistic? Am I autistic? Go watch fucking, go watch TikTok about autism, and you'll come out a fucking crazy person.
I want to see what happens when autistic people have a spiritual awakening. Like if you make them do yoga, or if you make them like, I don't know, like take mushrooms and then like sit through like this nice environment of like monks or whatever. I want to see what happens. Like will they keep being autistic? Yeah, probably, but they'll probably feel way better about it. Like,
well, it's weird. In my own experience with what I've been doing over the past few years, I used to be much more obviously on the autism spectrum. And much more, I was clinically diagnosed with BPD and bipolar. Not super familiar with that diagnosis at the time because I was a fucking preteen. But as I have been doing this, I used to hyper-identify with that stuff as like a personality trait. I was like
evil autism on Reddit kind of shit.
Yeah. I was like, that's just how I am. But now that I have taken time to contemplate and align things, I don't feel myself experiencing the symptoms so much. So
it's controversial to like try to like dive
absolutely,
into
absolutely, man. People will fucking nail me to the wall with pitchforks over that one. But like, I am convinced that if you take an autistic person and you change the environment around them and you change the enrichment they're getting and the stimulation they're getting, and the emotional variables that are swimming around, like. And try to get them to a more like grounded, aligned, peaceful place, like they're going to feel a lot less fucking autistic. They're going to feel a lot less anxious.
You're going to feel more human.
more human, a lot less mood swings,
Less robotic.
right. I think we live in a system that is extremely fucking overwhelming, and it can obviously have very strong effects on your fucking neurochemistry.
It forces us to be reactive instead of responsive.
Absolutely. So yeah, I think about that shit all the time. I grew up in a very hyper-stimulated environment, very loud. I wouldn't call it traumatizing by any means, and I know people have lived in much rougher circumstances, but just very attention draining. Just like everything shouting for me to pay attention to it. And I don't know where this quote comes from, and I'm probably gonna misquote it, but it goes something like "God is loudest in silence," or something like that. And finding myself just alone in the woods without even much of a beautiful sunset to fucking gaze at, just being alone, drinking good water, eating good food, breathing good air in a good temperature. I just feel like a very different person now.
Yeah. And it's fucked up because I don't think this is something that's supposed to be limited to just a few people. I think this is supposed to be the next. I say this is the next stage of human evolution. Is people? All you got to do is just shift your perspective a little bit. That's all we're doing, right? It's putting things into perspective, and that includes like the deepest elements of self. And it's like, why are you doing these things really? You know, and it's like it's fucked up because, you know, as a creative, and especially in like these fucked up Facebook circles or whatever, everyone's like a slave to their habits pretty much. Like after, you know, when we were young, we were just daredevils and we were just living life. Now we're all old. Now it's like we have to admit, now we're just being slaves to our habits. Like we got to do something else, you know?
Absolutely, man. We were the generation like the 27 Club. You know what I mean? It was like we're gonna die at 27. We're gonna blow out our fucking brains like Kurt Cobain. Every single, you know, struggling millennial or Gen Z you talk to is always like their repeating thought is like, if shit gets bad enough, if I fuck up enough, I'll just kill myself.
Yeah.
And it's like, you know, a lot of people do, and I feel sorry for them or however I feel about that. But I think the hardest thing coming into adulthood is realizing that dying is hard.
Yeah.
Realizing that you're not going to kill yourself no matter how bad shit gets. And it can get worse and worse and fucking worse. And you will endure it.
Until someone fucking kills you.
Until somebody fucking kills you, or until you fucking overdose. And you're lucky if it kills you instead of turning you into a fucking vegetable, you know?
Yeah.
I think that's almost akin to like having a child. You know, the moment you realize that, where you're like, okay, fuck, like I'm making it till 30. Damn. You know what I mean? Like that's when you have to start making some fucking changes.
Yeah. And that's like becoming more common, you know, because back then it's like it wasn't a common problem because, you know, you had people starting families when they were like 16 and then moved on to like 18 and then moved on to like 25 and then moved on to like 32. Now it's moved on to like 40s, you know, like
right.
So it's like, yeah, people, I also think people are like aging slower in general, like physically and mentally.
I have mixed feelings on that. I feel like definitely kind of on a more spiritual or esoteric or like personality tip. Yes, there are no adults anymore. Everybody's aging extremely slowly. But on a biological tip, like our generation's not doing well. Gen Z's not doing well. They're experiencing.
Did you see that video where he's like, they thought my mom was my sister?
I haven't, but I know like that kind of fucking shit. Like, it's like, I don't know how many fucking people in their 20s I've talked to within the past year that are like, yeah, I got back pain. Like and back pain's not that big of a deal, but that's such a.
I think it's a mix of stress and and bad decisions from like one. Oh. Yeah. So it's like one generation was making bad decisions and one generation has to deal with a lot more stress.
Yeah, but at the same time, like, you know, my parents grew up in a fucking in a trailer park, but they were still eating like normal fucking food.
Yeah.
When I came around, when I got born, I was eating pizza flavor of like 50 different fucking foods for every meal. I was eating that fucking Chef Boyardee. I was eating all that fucking, You know what I mean? We all were. We all
Well,
were.
it was because it wasn't just because it was like it was also popular and pushed. Like because it was like this is look how convenient it is. Look how
Yeah.
trendy it is. Look how great it is. Like
Dude, even as somebody who has like carved those cravings out of my life to the point of like non-existence, I
same.
still go to the grocery store and I walk through that fucking aisle and like I see all that packaging and
You're
I'm
like
like,
this is great. It's like
bro,
nostalgic.
yeah, like I want some fucking pizza rolls. I want the
I remember. I remember
Totino's.
the X-Men Chef Boyardee. There's like little Spider-Man too. Yo,
Yeah,
honestly,
yeah.
honestly, another thing I had to cut out, and it was just painful for me as an Asian, but I realized it was just bad. Was instant ramen. I was like, this is just like, fuck this shit, you know, like fuck this, like
It's horrible.
and I loved it too. I was like, I would eat that shit all the time, and then one day it just clicked in my head, and I was like, this shit sucks. Like this is bad food. Like
Yeah. No,
you can't
dude,
live like this.
I grew up on eating almost exclusively that for a period of time.
But it's so delicious. But you have to just admit it to yourself. You're like, this is
Dude,
fucking terrible. Like this is bad for you.
absolutely, it's worse than dog food. Like dog
Yeah.
food's at least like
More-
nutrients. You know what I mean? Even if it's fucking horse,
It's got a
hooves, like,
crazy macro spread.
still, yeah, exactly. Like horse hooves at least come from a horse. You know
I'd
what I
rather,
mean? Like,
yo, it's better to eat gorilla chow than ramen. Like straight
yeah,
up.
yes, yeah. No, I will never fucking touch that shit anymore.
Yeah, I used to, and I'll like it's fucked up because I loved it. Like it was actually a staple, and I'll honestly make it for, especially if it's like it's like a, to me it's like a emergency hangover cure. Like when
Yeah.
I'm like hungover as fuck, eat that salty, soupy, spicy.
Absolutely. No, I mean the one good thing I have finally done for myself is just biting the bullet and understanding that like in regards to spending habits, if there's anything to ball out on financially, like ball out on your fucking food. Like
Yeah.
get the good food. I know it's fucking expensive. I know I get on Facebook and give people dietary advice all day.
No, you should.
And
It's good to
and-
spread the knowledge.
yeah, like the knowledge is good, but like
You know what I like? I like the fact that at this point the bar is set. Here's how lowest the bar is set. Like I always tell people, it's like you probably don't have to do anything extra. You just probably have to do less because it's like you eat so much bullshit. All you have to do is just eat less of it, and you'll be exponentially better off than you are now. Like
absolutely, or just the simpler format of it. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like
it's like like there's people that would eat 3 times a day, which is fine. Maybe that's more nutrition, but it's garbage. Like 3 meals a day of shit. I mean,
fucking absolutely.
3 meals a day of good shit is also a lot. So if you had
It is.
if you had 1 meal a day of good shit, that could honestly like sustain. Especially now, like we don't have to do this physical shit anymore. So we got to stop eating like we do. Like it's not gonna function right, you know? Like
No, absolutely. You only really want to be eating 3 to 2 meals a day if you have a very like active lifestyle.
Yeah.
Otherwise, like one good meal a day or
Yeah.
even every other day
Yeah.
is like I hate saying it because I love to fucking eat.
Me
but
too.
It's you know, it's better.
I grew up eating 3 times a day and it didn't do shit for me, but as an adult, it took like a little bit of time of eating just once a day, and I was like, this is insane how different it was. And I understood I understood immediately why monks lived the way they did. Like I understand now. And it's not that it gives you any like superpowers or anything. What it does is it makes you more receptive to like blessings, literally. Like
Yeah, well,
it makes you less dense, like spiritually, you know, physically, like you become less like materially karmic, you know?
right. And on like a biological tip too, like your mitochondria is just spending a lot less time trying to digest energy that you are not using.
Yeah.
Your body is just spending less fucking time and fuel
Yeah.
burning fuel.
And
You
there's
know, it's-
also there's that, and then you add like semen retention on top of it. Holy shit! Like that's because I mean it's true. Like you know, ejaculation does expend so much raw fluid from your body. You know.
So the only addendum I want to let men know about that is you want to at least be doing it once a week, because your testosterone will spike after 7 days, but then dramatically start decreasing after that.
But I think it's like it's also age group.
Yeah. But but just in general, I know a lot of guys are doing like eternal nofap, and I think that's good on like a spiritual tip. But you really do, just for the sake of your male biology, you want to be doing it once a week.
If you're 25, I think if you're 25 to 40, yeah, once a week is right.
Yeah, just because like they'll even give this advice to people who are transitioning like into women,
Yeah.
where it's like, if you want to lower your fucking testosterone, stop jacking off forever, bro. Like after 7 days, you will have at 7 days you'll have the peak of testosterone. After those 7 days, it starts to decline a lot.
I think from ages like 10 to 18, you should do it once every 3 days.
Yeah, I feel you. You need that fucking release.
Like
Or
being
you'll
an
just
angry, pissed off, like horny
right,
teenager, you're like fuck
right,
this.
right.
Yeah, I remember those years. I remember when I was an angry, fucking pissed off teenager.
Yeah, dude, I feel you. It took me a long fucking time to get out of that phase.
Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah,
That was the problem. Like being an angry, pissed off teenager is a lot of fun.
absolutely. I feel like I had less outlets for it, so it was just pure frustration, 24/7.
Damn.
Um,
I had like public property damage. I got to like ride through traffic on like bikes with no brakes. Like just
yeah,
like
yeah. I missed out on all that shit. I'm still envious of every fucking angry teenage boy out there, with a town to hate
well, it also
around
it,
them.
it also makes you grow up way too fast, in my
Yeah,
opinion. I
yeah.
think I think a lot of my boys around here who I grew up with well, most of them are dead, honestly. Most of my boys
Yep.
who I grew up with around here are fucking dead. It was
Right.
because it's just a lot of drugs. Like the
Yeah,
drugs will
absolutely.
really speed things up a bit, so to speak.
I mean, it's like I grew up very self-sheltered from a lot of that shit,
Yeah,
and it wasn't into my later teen years
you
where I
realize it
started.
was a problem.
Yeah, yeah, and I started hanging out with more people who had like grown up a lot faster, and for me, it felt like I'd just been banished to the fucking wastelands. I was
Yeah.
like, oh no, like you guys aren't doing good. We have to get out of here. We have to stop fucking hanging out in the trap house garage, please, for the love of God.
Well, there's
Uh,
nothing wrong with that. I think that's just like clairvoyance in a sense.
I feel you.
That's like straight up looking at looking at the, because that's what else could it turn into? What else could it turn out as? Like honestly,
Absolutely, dude. I remember one point like hanging out with the homies at the fucking house where everybody would party at, and they had just been on like psychedelics for fucking days and not feeding themselves and like abusing their prescriptions and shit. And I would go over there and start being like, okay, like you guys are fucking retarded. You have no enrichment whatsoever. I'm gonna show you my favorite documentary on ants, and now you're gonna learn about the sun. And like I would just put on like educational content, and, like sit down with them, being like, we got to plan our way out of here, guys. Like we gotta start figuring out how to fucking become adults, man, because
that
nobody's here to tell us how to be.
honestly, it's got to be this like fusion of cyberpunk and prepper culture. Like
Yes,
like cyber prepper. Like
cyber prepper.
yeah,
No, totally, man.
yeah. That's the only way, because you gotta, first of all, you gotta adapt with like the fact that you get drone striked at any minute, at any moment.
Absolutely.
There's
Are
like
you home?
there's like a drone with a Glock strapped to it. Could just go by your window.
That's what I'm saying, man. All the homies I grew up with that were hardcore anarchists and are like, let's go to war with the cops. And I'm like, bro, we got space lasers. Like, do not do that.
Yo,
Um,
yo,
but then
what were you saying?
go for it.
Oh yeah, I was saying like, more people are like, literally. I know people that are wearing masks just because they sell drugs and they know they're on camera like 24/7.
Yeah, yeah. I definitely I feed myself in a very particular way, so I get that notion. But it's funny, like what you said about the cyberpunk prepper stuff.
Yeah, cyber prepper.
So cyber prepper. So like I'm seeing, with my region, a lot of like older, and by older I mean like our age, homeless kids kind of drifting in,
Yeah,
and they're having a lot of trouble because like some of them, like they don't know how to use a phone.
Yeah.
They don't know how to navigate the internet. If they need public benefits and shit, they can't navigate the websites.
Interesting.
If they get gifted technology, they have no fucking idea what to do with it. And it reminds me of the Dark Ages, when like only a certain caste of people could read. You know what I mean? And like if you couldn't read, like it was really easy to just be like, God said, this is my house. What are you gonna fucking do about it? And it's like, I guess it's your house because God said. I can't fucking read.
Do you think those people will always be around?
Oh, dude, I used to because
But
I
now
used
they're
to think,
dying.
yeah. Like I used to think,
They're resilient.
yeah, like the nature of surviving the coming times would be like I said earlier, like discernment is more important than knowing how to like fish and start a fire and hunt and shit like that. These guys were prepared for that world. They
Yeah.
were prepared to be fucking scrappy, materially scrappy. They were prepared to be fucking, durable, but like they were not prepared for city ordinances coming in being like, you just can't be here. And you can't sign up for government housing because you don't know how to use the internet. As somebody like me, like I'm sure you've seen me like grift online before, where I drop a fucking Cash App and go, hey, like I need some fucking help, and the homies come and help. They don't have that. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? They're still outside the gas station trying to get fucking physical paper dollars that like people don't carry anymore.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
there, I was talking to one guy out here, and he was just,
He was just
what's
what?
up?
He was just what?
Oh, he was just kind of musing about like how he's got very like pretty feet, and it's like homie, like you're homeless. If you knew how to use the internet, like
You would use
you could totally just fucking go sell your fucking feet pics. You know what I mean? But like if you do not have that access and that understanding, like you're not gonna fucking survive anymore.
That's a metaphysical skill, for sure.
Right.
So it's like, yeah, I don't know. I just feel like, yeah, they're definitely gonna die off then at that point. You know,
Yeah.
it's like then that is like a whole different species just being created at that point, like right under everyone's noses.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like another thing too is like, I've been very scrappy and kind of a street kid myself. But one example is like I got a horrible tooth abscess that was like threatening my fucking brain. But since I have access to the internet and like had learned a lot about, remediative herbs and shit like that, like I was able to treat that myself.
Yeah.
And the rest of these guys out here, like they think they're gonna survive just by raw fucking being, just by punking it out, just by fucking being hardy as shit. But the moment their fucking teeth hurts, man, like they have no practical skill to survive anymore. And it's not like we have a medical system that's very reliable for people anymore. Like, most of the homeless you talk to, especially in my region, like I would say a good 70% of them end up homeless because of medical complications.
Yeah. Like they have a sick mom or dad or something.
Absolutely.
And suddenly they're in debt, like they're $15,000 deep.
Yeah. Or they get in one bad car crash after, getting off of heroin.
That shit happens one. That's what I'm saying. It's like overnight. That shit happens to overnight to people. That's what's insane to me. I'm like, this isn't like something they could have like, gotten themselves into like over time. Like this happens overnight. Like all of us, like 99% of us are like one bill away from like everything falling apart.
Absolutely. And, there's even a statistic backing that where it's like 80% of foreclosures are because of fucking health complications.
Yeah.
Like, it's not a fucking good position to be in, and it's not in a good position to have a general public that is completely disinterested in learning about their own bodies.
But that's another thing. It's like I also look at I try to look at the precursors to problems, which is like, for example, a culture that actively supports like overeating or unhealthy eating and like active consumption or consumption in excess. You know, like we're built on this notion like, yeah, we should just spray all this like weird shit on us. This makes us smell good. This may not be good for us, or store shit in plastic bottles, or eat a lot of this shit, a lot of cheese, like shit drenched in cheese, or it's like
absolutely
have a lot of promiscuous sex with a lot of people and all that shit.
Right.
Like it's just not one thing. It's like everything is like industrially geared to keep us consuming.
Absolutely, and it's one thing to be like consuming like shit that's actually beneficial. It's another thing to have everything you're consuming having a
negative
whole fucking scroll of side effects. You know, and I think our medical system, as much as I want to be critical of it, I do just want to say like the primary problem they're having is that, okay, say you're having a mental breakdown at work, or say your spine's like fucked up, and you know, the natural route through healing your spine would take fucking 5 years of dedication. That's great if you can do what I've done or what a fucking Buddhist monk does.
Yeah.
Go up into the fucking mountains and start, you know, focusing on your body and rehabilitating and shit.
Yeah.
But
alignment.
for the rest of, but for the rest of us, it's like, I have work tomorrow. Work tomorrow. So just give me a fucking pill that numbs the pain.
Yeah.
Give me a pill that helps me just fucking focus my way through it. Fuck the side effects. We'll get there in 10 years.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
but that's not working anymore because people are living longer than they expected to, too. That's another thing. Like, yeah. It's like, shit, I didn't think I'd be 50 years old, single, and like, you know, like with nothing and health problems, my teeth falling out. Like, what the fuck?
Right.
Yeah. I thought I'd be a dead badass cowboy, you know? Like,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no, sorry, bud. This is why I think martial arts is not the one end all be all, but it's a good one. You know, it's a good route. I mean, sports is too expensive now. That's like far too industrialized, like sports.
Yeah.
Whereas martial arts is still kind of sacred, you know, because you always have martial arts teachers that are like, I don't do this for a living. And that's a good sign. When they're like, listen, I don't do this for a living. You know, like when they say that to you and you see what they can do, that you're always in good hands, you know, like, because they're like,
oh, well, and I also think it's very holistic, and I don't mean holistic in like a woo-woo sense. I mean that it treats things as a whole.
Yeah, like
you're focusing on your poise,
your attitude,
your breathing, your every step, every movement. I think that's incredibly fucking beneficial.
Because like they'll tell a rube, they'll be like, "Yo, your facial expression's wrong," and they'll be like, "What the fuck does my face?" The inside you could see it. They're thinking like, "What does my facial expression have to do with it?" But then they'll abide. Then they'll change their facial expression. And suddenly it looks right. Everything's done perfectly, and you realize how connected everything is. You know, like every bit of expression matters. Every centimeter, every inch of every atom, like it all matters. Like you just gotta like know how to like what to the degree you can control it.
Totally.
And if you're fighting someone, that's like the ultimate test, right? Because it's who's better at controlling that. You know, who's better at controlling that reality. Like that's
absolutely.
That's why martial arts and like esoteric shit, like to me, it goes hand in hand. You know, like they may not realize it, but it does.
No, I completely agree. I mean, that's like what I said about like the early Crowley stuff or LeVay or Blavatsky, etc. Like there's always a fucking physical component, and they pulled those physical components from fucking the metaphysics of martial arts.
Yeah.
I don't think a lot of people know this, but the like chiropractor work, the earliest practice of this stems from when the Sethites met the Hindus and started like delving into the philosophy of Kundalini. This is where you start getting these fucking stretches that reach down into your lymphatic system, and you start seeing people doing transcendental meditation
and contemplation.
Right, but they didn't get through contemplation by just sitting in a fucking gaming chair and thinking all day. They were fucking moving their bodies. This was shit that came out of fucking martial arts.
You're right. The biggest trigger for me was martial arts. Like honestly, like yeah, I could have gone through all this shit, but it was just that whole experience with the tournament and practice and training. It just put me on another state, and I was like, fucking A. And that open it because like my brain already had it. It just needed a reason to crack itself open to like you know, release it all. You know, like, and the martial arts was like the perfect like Shonen Jump-esque like emotional thing, is just to go all out and be like, yeah, I'm gonna win this for myself, and then you just crack open. And it's like, And I just did it. It's like, yes.
No, totally, dude. It's like if you if you study what frequencies can do to the brain,
Yeah. Yeah.
that
A lot of
shit's
people
really
think
cool.
it's hokey.
No, I get it because okay, like here's the thing, like I am super into frequencies, but will only use one brand, which is the purest tone I've been able to find anywhere. Everybody thinks you can just take a car speaker or a portable speaker and turn on some frequencies and it's going to do something. Yeah, that's white noise, like it's relaxing, but you need them oscillating between your ears at very particular fucking
Yeah, like
frequencies.
binaural beats and stuff.
Yeah, and what's interesting is if you look at the architecture of like old Shaolin temples or where monks hang out in crowds of 1,000 people, just going Om. It's not that just the word Om is fucking magical. It's not just some random sacred thing. It's that they're immersing themselves in a very specific tone that they had to pass down through oral tradition with no deviation.
Yeah.
It wasn't just like you can't just be like oh you know what I mean, like it's got to be like oh you
And
know what I mean, like
and there was also like you could observe that in Egyptian tradition too. Ancient,
absolutely
and I'm not talking about ancient Egyptian. I'm talking about the traditions that were ancient to the ancient Egyptians.
right.
Like the
uh,
ancient Egyptians had their own archaeologists studying their own ancient Egyptians. Like it's
like
ridiculous.
yeah, and that shit even extended to the Abrahamic religions. There's a reason a mosque and a synagogue and a cathedral have specific fucking acoustics,
Yeah.
and why they practice, group vocal exercises in those spaces that have to be to a specific tone.
Yeah.
Um, it genuinely does have very positive impact on the brain. For anybody listening, if you're interested in delving into this at a modern science level, um, check out what the U.S. Army published about their gateway process. They
Oh
were
my God, the CIA, yeah, the Gateway. I always point to the Gateway Project. I love it. I love what Monroe Institute did with that. It was great.
yeah. I've actually gotten the remastered
The
tracks.
CDs, I need the CDs, and they're very
Yeah,
expensive now. They're a lot of, which is also a good sign. You know, a lot of people are interested in it to the point where it's like very expensive to get your hands on like the actual CD cuts. You know, like
yeah. Well, I want to let everybody know who's listening right now that they're free on Spotify finally. They are remastered. They are to the exact tone that they need to be. Um, but I want to clear up for people listening as well that these are from the company that the Army had contracted. These are not the initial audios. Um, so you will hear them talking about like woo-woo fucking concepts and shit because it was a product, but
yeah,
it is a product engineered to the same tonal uh, uh, specifications that the U.S. Army had decided like this is what we're using.
yeah.
Um,
Like here's level this, here's and next we'll meet you at level here. Yeah,
Yeah, exactly,
yeah.
exactly. Like the company who does it just does a more spiritualized version of what the army had contracted them to do.
That's very
So
interesting. But yeah, I do agree that like the Gateway Project was some intense shit. Also like Project Looking Glass, which to me was
yeah.
connected with the same shit. You know, just this.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, you create this like device where it stares into some kind of like visual form of infinity. Then yeah, it's gonna do like extrasensory things to your psyche, which is awesome. You know, like, and I do believe in this stuff, and I do think it's highly connected with spirituality, and I do believe it's highly connected with aliens, even, you know, more than people realize.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not even that hard to imagine to me. You know, I'm just like, yeah, it makes sense. You know, because well, spirituality is everything, and aliens kind of involve everything. So
I feel you. I these days I do not know where I stand on aliens. Have I've always been a very open mind about this stuff. I like to get into the actual hardcore research. It's not that I am a skeptic by any means. It's just I no longer know where they fit into the cosmology of shit.
yeah, because they're interdimensional. They're not like intersolar, intergalactic, or interuniverse. Like they're just in
Like
another dimension.
yeah, like it's hard for me to tell if it's real phenomenon or if it's phenomenon generated by the United States government doing weird shit. Russia was also very into parapsychology. Parapsychology is an excellent fucking field to get into if anybody's interested in this shit. Um, but
Yo,
I have no idea anymore.
same here. But with that, we're definitely past the hour, so I'll hit stop recording, and then I'll be the end of the episode. But I'll stay on the phone, right? I'll stay on the line.
Cool, man.
I just gotta take a leak if that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
Anyway, thanks for listening, everybody. You want to say any closing statements?
Thanks for listening. Smash my Cash App.
I'll link your Cash App. I'll link your Cash App on this. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks. The $CIDNNOR999.
Sounds good. Sounds good. I always say sounds good and sounds Gucci at the same time, but it should be. It sounds good. Anyway, good night, everybody.